So a few little tricks that I sort of tend to do. Once you've got a nice groove going, and I think that's kind of a nice groove. Guru's really good for a lot of the sort of really good sort of drum tricks that you hear. If I just mute some of these off. One of the first tricks that sort of people tend to get into is the whole kind of, those kind of repeating sort of minimal sort of instruments. They're very easy to get out of Guru. What you do is you just kind of draw a 16th pattern. You want to make sure that I mentioned the grooves to you earlier that I've bounced off myself. If you zoom in here, you'll see this is the one that people tend to use for the kind of minimal sounding stuff. It's called NTV Swing. I'm not entirely sure what NTV stands for, but I'm sure someone at FXpansion will let me know. And then I've been quantizing all of these to 50%. Now, with a lot of plugins, they tend to make the user interface is really kind of hands-on, so you can get kind of really involved in it. But sometimes it's difficult to recall, exact numbers and stuff. Like I've got these set to exactly 50%, so I want to get this to be exactly 50% as well. Logic gives you an option of viewing your plugins in two ways. The first way you can view your plugins is like this, which is the graphical user interface that they've spent a long time designing for you, and a long time making very pretty, so people think you've got very cool plugins. But quite often I like to dispense with that and go for a really, really boring box. It looks really boring, but what it actually enables you to do is, with things like that plugin where you've just got a knob that you can turn, it gives you an actual setting for each thing. So what I want to do is I want to alter, I'm set on engine 1, which is the first button here, and I want to alter the groove amount, and I want to get it to exactly 50%. So if I go into the view and get rid of all the prettiness and zoom in, you'll see down here you've got all the engine 1 settings, master, engine 1 groove. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to move that to exactly 50%. There we go. And then when I go back onto here, it should have moved to the middle. Now, I know it seems really kind of, you could just move the knob to the middle, but if you don't get it smack on, the delays won't match up exactly, and you won't get that you'll get flamming. So I always kind of set everything very specifically like that. And another good thing to do when you're using things like Guru is always take a copy as you're working along. If you're quite happy with some settings, before you start messing with them, just take a quick copy, and then if anything goes wrong, you can just hit the paste button after, and it pastes all the settings back on there again, so you haven't messed up. We're going to go for a sort of a clave sort of sound. For things like that, I tend to use Thomas Penton's Essential Drums and Percussion. Got to be the best collection of drums I've ever seen on sample CD. They're all 24-bit, they're all stereo, they're all immaculately sampled. And generally, straight out of the box, they all work. So we're just going to go for a clave. Minimal. Welcome to Minimal 101. So we go straight in with that, and obviously what you tend to hear is that in a lot of those sort of tracks, people do those kind of really quick sort of like rolls and stuff as well. Again, this is just something that Guru has kind of brought to the fray, I think. If you go onto the graph editor, which I showed you earlier with the shifting of things, you can alter lots of different sort of parameters. One of the parameters on there is called repeat, and if you click on that, what you can actually do, let me just zoom in for you, is just pick one. So we're going to go for this note here. There we go. And And then you can kind of throw some really crazy ones in there. Doesn't sound very exciting, but you can guarantee there's some minimal fans at home now wetting themselves. And again, what I tend to do as well is with things like this, that sounds great, but I like to try and inject a little bit of movement in there as well. So what I always do is I'll also go to the panning one, and I just kind of randomly throw a bit of panning around left to right. Because then this kind of manoeuvres the sound around for you. So you get this kind of like sort of circling sort of drum pattern, and if you're listening to it on headphones and stuff, or in a club with a really good stereo system, it really kind of, you know, you get this real sense of movement in the percussion, and I think stuff like that's important. It's very easy to fall into the trap of just kind of throwing stuff in and leaving things in the centre and not really thinking about stuff. But panning's really important, and it's one of the kind of most basic things I think people should master when it comes to production. So we're going to throw that over the top there. Drop it down in the mix a little bit. What I also tend to do, I don't know whether this is what everyone else does, but I tend to, when I actually mix things, I tend to mix from naught upwards rather than sort of come in at a volume level and then bring everything down to suit. I tend to take everything to naught as if you're on a sort of an old mixing console, and then mix upwards, because I think it's easier to hit the right level then, you know, you get to the point. Then I'm going to go for a little bit of a reverse clap. There's two ways of doing these in here. Well, there's probably more, but I tend to favour doing them like this. I'm going to copy the clap sample that we've got here onto the next pad, which you can do just by holding down alternate, grabbing the pad, moving across, and that's doubled up the pad. Then I'm going to go into the pad edit screen, reverse, which is going to give us the reverse one. And then what I always do is I set this to, you've got a little trigger button here. And what this does is you can sort of tell the program to gate to a certain set of parameters. You can tell it to gate by itself, so each time another one of these plays, the previous one cuts off, like as if it were a monophonic synth. You can gate by colour. You'll notice that each of the pads has got its own colour. There's blue, red, yellow and green, so anytime another red one will play, it'll gate off. Or you can do it by engine, so anytime anything else on engine 1 will cut off. I'm going to do it by colour because I've got my claps already in there. And then I'm just going to throw that just there. Now you can hear there's a little bit of a gap there. So I'm going to use the shifter, which I used earlier, just to push that forwards. So it leads perfectly on. And you get that kind of really nice sort of snappy reverse. And it will cut off. Back there. And again, I'm just going to take the cut off up a little bit. So there's not as much bottom end on it. Turn the volume down slightly. That just adds a little bit of liveliness into it. another trick that I like to do, which I think you may have seen this before, but I'm going to double check, I'm going to go over it anyway, is using the noise oscillators on Logic on their various different synths to generate sounds. I tend to use the ES1 for this. You know, you get these huge crashes and stuff on the kind of like the minimal text sort of things that are they go on forever, and they're sort of these huge sort of steam kind of noises. What I tend to use for that is I'll go into the ES1. Here you've got your oscillators. I'll zoom in for you. And your sub oscillator. Now you can select your sub oscillator to be an octave below, 2 octaves below, and then various sort of different variations on the octave. But you've also got the option to use an external source or a noise source. The external source will make the ES1 behave like a filter, a low pass filter, and then also, depending on what's coming in, you can actually put like a filter envelope on it and get some really kind of cool sort of funky house sort of things going on. But I'm going to use the sub oscillator set to noise. So you want to turn your mix all the way to sub. Just throw the channel back up. White noise. Get a little bit of resonance on there. And then literally, I'm just going to throw just a single held note in there. I'm going to use the force legato button again, just to make it the same length as the part. And then I'm going to time stretch the part. So if you hold down Alt, if you hold the end of it and press Alt, it puts it onto stretch mode, and I'm going to stretch that all the way to 9, and that's just giving me a really long MIDI part, really long white noise, which is just going to carry on forever. If you take the decay down slightly on the envelope, and it kind of dies off. Then one of the favourite sort of filters that I've got, which it helps me to get that sound, is Fab Filters Simplon. It's very, very basic, but it sounds fantastic. So we're just going to turn the resonance up here a little bit. We're going to go for a kind of bandpass sort of thing. Now, it has actually got a bandpass filter on it, this one, but if you use a low and a high at the same time, you can kind of control the width of the band. So I'm just going to throw this onto the channel, solo that, and you can get a really good kind of crash cymbal sort of. So that's quite a good crash now. I'm going to throw a compressor on it just to keep it in check, and then I'm going to side chain the compressor to the kick so it sucks in and out. I always leave the kick on an audio channel. Even if I use the Guru kick, what I'll do is I'll put a blank kick on the audio channel, but you can hear that sort of sucking in and out now. Switch that over to peak mode because it sucks a little bit more then. And we're just going to throw that over the top. You can kind of be as subtle or as violent with them as you want as well, because by increasing the resonance, it's going to make the white noise bite even more. So you want to get a really insane one as you come back in after a breakdown. You can just throw the resonance all the way up there, open the band a little bit, and it will really kind of let fly. But obviously for this, we're going to go a little bit more sort of subdued because it's a little bit more chilled.